3 weeks ago, Donald Trump placed a call to Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte. Now, not much was known about that phone call, other than a brief readout that was given by the White House at the time that said the two had a, quote, friendly conversation. They talked about Duterte's ongoing drug war, and they talked about relations between, or they talked about the situation in North Korea. Now, that all changed last night when the Intercept obtained and published a precise transcript of this call between these two world leaders. And there are three important takeaways that I want to go over here from what we can gather from this conversation. We'll do the quickest ones first. One, he revealed the location of two nuclear submarines to Rodrigo Duterte. This then goes into a transcript that is then circulated all around the Filipino centers, eventually made its way out into the press last night. The Washington Post also published this transcript last night. For obvious reasons, the locations of nuclear submarines are kept secret. We can talk a little bit about more about that later. Secondly, the way that he spoke about the North Korean issue was rather revealing. He spoke very casually about the use of nuclear weapons. He said things like, "I hope China takes care of this problem. If not, we will. We have two nuclear submarines over there. We don't want to have to use them, but we will if we have to." Speaking casually about a nuclear attack in a way that probably no American president ever even contemplated doing. Third, the one I want to talk about a little bit more, though, is the reason that he gave for the call. He told Rodrigo, and he called him Rodrigo. The reason he gave Rodrigo for the call was to congratulate him on the way he was carrying out his drug war. He said, "I just wanted to call to congratulate you on how you're dealing with on how well you're dealing with your drug problem." For those of you who don't know what Duterte is doing in the Philippines, that might not be as chilling a statement as it truly is. But once you understand how he's waging this so-called drug war, it becomes just an extraordinary statement. Duterte has himself admitted to running death squads. He has himself admitted to executing people himself to show other police officers how easy it is to do. And more than 7,000, possibly more than 9,000 people have been killed by the police since Duterte took office last June in what he calls a drug war. The police are going around and executing people in the streets and leaving their bodies to rot. It is one of the most extraordinary human rights catastrophes, an unfolding atrocity happening right here in the early 21st century. President Obama offered some tepid, measured criticism of Duterte's campaign, and for that, Duterte called him a son of a whore and a slew of other not so nice things, and promised that he was going to start working closer with China and Russia if the U.S. wasn't nicer to him. Trump made a veiled reference to that. He said, "I know that my predecessor, didn't understand or didn't approve of what you were doing, but I wanted you to know that I understand it, and I understand what you're doing, and you're saving your country from this scourge of a drug problem." This is quite simply a mass murderer who is carrying out extrajudicial executions in the streets of his country, and Donald Trump called him to tell him that he was proud of what he was doing. Now, separately, let's and then we can take any questions that you might have on this. Here in Washington, the thing that is picking up more attention, because I guess United States complicity in human rights abuses isn't breaking news, is the revelation of the location of the two nuclear submarines. Now, the obvious reason that you would want to keep the location of submarines secret is that the whole point of a submarine is that it can't be detected. Once it is detected, and if hostility breaks out, they are absolutely sitting ducks. Now they are so sophisticated that they are able to move through the water without usually being detected. But if you have some sense that they are within a certain area, then, as you can imagine, it becomes easier to detect where they are, smoke them out, and annihilate them. One reason that we decided to go forward with publishing this transcript is that it was already known that there was at least one nuclear submarine and a nuclear aircraft carrier in that region. So in that sense, Trump wasn't revealing anything extraordinarily new. Two, this was about 3 weeks ago, so that doesn't mean that they are necessarily still there. And three, Donald Trump is not actually a reliable source for any facts. So just the fact that Donald Trump says there are 2 nuclear submarines off the coast of Korea doesn't actually mean that there are or ever were 2 nuclear submarines off the coast of Korea. This is a guy who said there was a naval fleet steaming towards Korea, when in fact we later learned this naval fleet was steaming in precisely the opposite direction. So, on the surface, Trump's revelation is damning to him and his ability to be trusted with sensitive information. But if you dig a little deeper and you're North Korea and you're trying to ascertain genuine reality, you probably can't do that from Donald Trump's comments. So Eric's going to be reading your questions from YouTube. From Facebook. If you're on YouTube, feel free to comment away, and I'll read them later. And nice guy or a narcissist, either one. But if you have a question, drop it in the in the Facebook comment section.
Diana Garino Pruitt says the transcript displayed how both of them deferred to the Chinese for solving the North Korea problem and didn't show very much leadership on either side.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I would urge everybody to read this thing. We'll post a link to it, but you can find it by just Googling kind of Intercept Duterte Trump transcript, something like that. She's exactly right. Trump, like he says in public, said in private to Duterte, I really hope China can solve this problem. They have a lot of leverage. All of their stuff goes through China. He said, I met the Chinese premier recently. We spent time in Florida together. We bonded, and I really hope that they're going to be able to take care of this. If they don't, then we will. And Duterte said, well, I'm going to call a Chinese leader and impress upon him the importance of doing this, because the other alternative is a nuclear explosion, and that's that's in nobody's interest. And he is quite accurate about that. Interestingly, Trump in the transcript also seemed to be kind of asking him for basic geopolitical information. He said, Rodrigo, do you think China has leverage over North Korea? As if he's not quite sure how he feels about this situation. And Rodrigo said, yes, I feel like they do. And he asked other questions like, what do you think of Kim Jong-un? Is he a madman? Is he stable? Is he not stable? It was interesting to see Trump asking what seemed to be genuine questions to try to become educated on the issue, the same way that he did when he was with the Chinese leader. The Chinese leader gave him a 10-minute history on the relationship between North Korea and China, and Trump said, wow, I had no idea it was that complicated.
Great. So Paula Irene DiCarlo says that Duterte has killed 7,000 people. Is that accurate?
I mean, he hasn't personally killed that many. He has personally killed some, and he has admitted to that. But his camp, when he ran for president, he said, "I'm going to be the Philippines Hitler." Like that's a paraphrase, but that's basically what he said. He said, "If you're at all involved with the drug trade, I'm going to kill you." And the way that it's being reported from the islands is that the police are getting bounties, something like $1,000 per body. So they're going around, they're looking for people who they think can be tangentially connected to the drug war. They are killing them in the streets, and they are getting paid for that. And Duterte is boasting about this. And what has started happening is what you would imagine would happen. Let's say your neighbor has a branch running over your backyard, and you've been telling that asshole that you want that branch out of your backyard for years. The guy doesn't care. The guy's dog shits in your front yard. It's a typical angry relationship with your neighbor. Now, what's happening in the Philippines? Hey, Filipino National Police, I believe I have located a drug dealer. That's all the police need because they're looking to just up their body count. So, boom, door kicked in, they get paid, they kill this guy, and then you don't have to deal with the dog shitting in your front yard or the branch coming over your fence anymore.
I mean, I think it was 6 months ago I saw the photos of the bodies stacked up.
Yes. And there are concentration camp, like they look like and are concentration camps where they're keeping people. It is an ongoing atrocity, one of the greatest atrocities taking place in the 21st century so far.
Okay, another comment that really has to be addressed, if it's true. Christina Scott says that ISIS has taken over a city in the Philippines. So stop talking about how many drug dealers he kills.
So, okay. Yeah, so there is, and so I interviewed Lindsey Graham this morning about this particular issue, and he's as hard on terrorism as you could possibly imagine. What she's referring to is that in a region of the Philippines this week, Duterte declared martial law, saying that he needed it to crush an insurgency that is affiliated with ISIS. And as Lindsey Graham told me this morning, we have to do two things. We have to help the Filipinos in their fight against ISIS and affiliated terror organizations, and we have to respect the rule of law and respect human rights. It's nice to say, don't worry about the fact that he's killed 7,000 or 9,000 people in the streets in an ongoing genocide, and just focus instead on combating terrorism. But that, A, is totally immoral. But B, it misses the connection between these two issues. One of the things that makes these insurgencies thrive is in an environment where people are opposed to their government. It becomes channeled now at this time of the 21st century into these kind of radical Islamist militant movements, but in the past that has been channeled in lots of other different directions. So these are insurgencies, and these are kind of rebellions first that then look for ideological cover second. So the more that you create conditions of instability, the more that you're going to foster the very kind of thing that you're saying that they should go after, and that should excuse the thing that's causing it.
Sherry Scoff says, how can that horrid man congratulate a crazy man who executes people? I'm going to venture maybe a guess. Donald Trump feels that he lost his brother to alcoholism, and maybe he has sort of a personal thing against substance abuse?
He certainly has a thing against substance abuse, but he also has a thing for strong men. He considers himself to be a tough guy. He went to military school briefly, which for him is the equivalent of having served in wartime. And he loves being around these generals. He loves the idea of a strong, tough leader. The thing that he attacked his Republican rivals and his Democrats for was for being weak. Low energy Jeb. Hillary's sick. All of these people are weak. I am strong. I'm going to get this done. The people that he admires are people like Turkey's Erdogan, Russia's Putin, people like Duterte, people like Modi in India, and these are all kind of autocratic leaders who rule by dictate. And the thing that Trump has found the most disturbing to him about being president is that he can't rule by fiat. I think he genuinely did believe that the Congress kind of reported to him, that he oversaw it, that he would say, Paul Ryan, do this, Mitch McConnell, do this, and they would do it. And turns out that it's nothing like that whatsoever, and that really bothers him. The system that he wants is a system more like the one being run by these guys that he admires, these tough guys. And I think it comes from his own insecurity, but we don't need to really psychoanalyze the guy too much.
You know, I looked at the Billy Bush Access Hollywood tape again because he gave an interview to Hollywood Reporter, and I was a little sympathetic, having read the interview, to what he's been through. And basically he said that, well, this guy's bigger than me, and I need to act in a way that makes him think of me as on the inside. That was my job, because he was going to mean a lot to my company if he would be on our show 3 times a week. And so that what you're just saying now is sort of like a similar dynamic, except for now it's Trump looking up to someone that he admires and is exercising power in a way that makes him think that guy is the big man. Okay, Karen Soria is concerned about the way that immigrants in this country will be treated. She says that Trump supporters would like to do the same thing. But do you think that Donald Trump... I mean, can you imagine what he might say if someone asked him that question? Can you see this coming to America? Of course he would say no. He must understand that would be stopped. He can't even get a Muslim ban, through the courts here.
But I think he probably thinks that it's a good idea. I don't know whether or not he thinks he can I mean, he said it. We're going by his words. You're doing an amazing job. I wanted to congratulate you on what you've been doing, and you can read the transcript for yourself, and it's no secret. And also, so Trump gets a pass on a lot of things because people assume that he's just ignorant and has no idea what he's talking about, that he's just repeating things that he's heard on Fox News or read on a Breitbart article that was printed out for him. But in this case, there's the most chilling moment to me was when he said, I know that my predecessor didn't necessarily approve of what you're doing, but I do. And so that is a consciousness there. That is a sign that he knows that this is controversial, what he's doing, that this is something that people in the past have said, this is the wrong way to handle this. It's a human rights abuse. It's illegal. It's immoral, etc. So he's acknowledging that exists and saying that yet he still supports it. So this is one of those odd cases where it seems like Trump actually does have some idea of what he's talking about, which makes it that much more chilling. Now, I don't know whether he thinks he could accomplish it here in the United States, but I think he really does feel like strength and state-sponsored violence are answers to intractable problems like that.
Well, what I was saying is that Billy Bush doesn't really feel that way about women, but he was saying that to impress Donald Trump on that bus, and maybe Donald Trump.
I mean, that's also probably part of it, that Trump, he doesn't want to look weak in front of these tough guys.
Fantastic. Okay, so Richard Rush says the president throws out more of these false flags than an NFL referee. Now, I think NFL referees are pretty good on the whole, but all right. So he's saying that Trump is just trying to distract us with this.
Well, that presumes some type of longer plan that Trump has, and I'm not really convinced that he has one. He didn't think that being president was going to be difficult. He didn't think he was going to be president, first of all. Then he didn't think it would be hard. But he didn't really have a big plan, for how he was going to get anything done. So I don't even know what these things are distractions from, because these distractions, he needs distractions from these distractions at this point.
I want to know the behind the scenes about how you came into possession of this, and how you were racing with the Washington Post and all of that. And did you have any, well, you addressed this a little bit, but before you published it, do you have any ethical or national security concerns that you discussed within your new bureau at The Intercept?
Right. So, yes, and for those of you who are not following the ins and outs of my career, which I assume is all of you, I have left the Huffington Post, and I'm now the bureau chief for The Intercept. All I can say is that we obtained this document. We obtained it several days ago, and then what we set out doing was confirming that it's authentic. Because one of the big problems that you're going to have in journalism going forward is going to be fake documents, fake audio recordings, and even fake videos. The technology exists now to make a fake audio recording in a pretty seamless way, and obviously fake documents are as easy to produce as Photoshop. So we partnered with a Philippine news organization called the Rappler, which is a great kind of tough alternative publication there in the Philippines that is doing extraordinarily courageous work in a place where journalists are being killed on a regular basis. And so they took the document and took it to their sources in the presidential palace there that they have, and they looked at it and they said, yes, this is an authentic document. I have seen it circulated internally here. This is legit. So once we knew it was legit, then we reach out to this White House for comment, and we were going back and forth with them over the course of the day, planning. We were finished on Monday with our writing and reporting. We were planning to publish it Wednesday morning, and then all of a sudden we saw that the Washington Post had written a small story related to the transcript, and that when we assumed that they also had gotten a copy of it, so we then at that point immediately published the document. The national security implications are profound, so we definitely thought very carefully and deliberately about them. The two questions that we confronted are, how do we report on Trump's comments about North Korea without sensationalizing them, without doing anything that could inch the world closer to a nuclear confrontation? And so we wanted to make sure that we were just quite accurate and explicit about the way that he was talking about the North Korea situation. And then the second was with the nuclear submarines, and for the reasons I mentioned earlier, we decided to go ahead and publish that. And the Washington Post made the same decision to publish Trump talking about the location of these two submarines for all of those reasons.
So do you regret being so cautious and having the Washington Post come out before you did?
And it wasn't even caution at the end. At the end, it was we were just waiting timing-wise for the morning. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, definitely.
It may not be a big deal to regular people, but I know for journalists.
Yes, I know nobody cares. Like, absolutely nobody outside of journalism cares. Yeah. But inside journalism, it's like the only thing you care about. So, yeah, when I saw that they had done that, I was, oh, Christ's sake, come on. Yeah, so it happens,
And you can't say anything about how something like this gets in the hands of journalists?
Not yet. And it gets in the hands of journalists in all different kinds of ways. But no, for source protection reasons on this one, all we can say at this point is that we obtained it.
Well, for the first time, even though we said we'll answer questions on whatever, they're all about this.
It's pretty fascinating. Yeah.
Danny Knapp says, it's horrible what Duterte is doing, but one, what does the USA know about what to do on the war on drugs? And two, what in the history of the last 50 years would suggest that we can help the Philippine people? Our track record handling dictators is always one of unintended consequences and repercussions with great expense.
That's fair. And well, first of all, I always call his drug war a drug war in quotes, because it is more just a campaign of extrajudicial killing for political reasons that drug users and drug dealers are getting caught up in. But there are many people that aren't even affiliated with the drug trade that are getting caught up in it, which the U.S. drug war, which I wrote a book on and care about very deeply, is a decidedly different thing. They are not executing people by the thousands in the streets. They are certainly executing some people in the streets, but absolutely not by the thousands. They're throwing them in prison. They're doing other horrible things. That's its own separate issue. And he's right that the United States does not have a great moral leg to stand on to lecture about the war on drugs. On the issue of the U.S. positively influencing the Philippines, the ability to positively influence indeed probably is quite limited, but they could do less negative influencing. Most of the weapons that are used by the Filipino police and army, originate from the United States. So just right there, you could do something about that. And Ben Cardin, senator from Maryland, and Marco Rubio from Florida have been pushing a bill that would block sales of weapons to the Filipino National Police, which reduces the number of weapons that they have to use, but it also bothers them, and so it makes them want to change their behavior in order to try to get their hands on these coveted weapons. The history of the U.S. and the Philippines is itself extraordinarily tangled. For those that don't know, the U.S. took over the Philippines as a colony in 1898 as kind of an accidental byproduct of the Spanish-American War. The war broke out in Cuba, but when the United States won the war against Spain and took over Cuba, supposedly liberated Cuba, but actually just took it over, the Philippines were just thrown in as and the United States, which was in the middle of its massive imperial expansion, or thinking about becoming an imperial power at the time, wanted to use Manila and islands surrounding it as a coaling station, because the way that the navies moved around the world at the time was, you needed lots of different coaling stations because your ships would run out of coal. Quite simply, the Philippines, for their part, had no interest in being a colony of the United States, and waged a bloody, bitter insurgency that lasted, depending on which island you're talking about, well into World War I and beyond. And they did not actually obtain their independence until 1946. So that was a 48-year gap. Now, part of that time they were occupied by Imperial Japan. The United States, reconquered it at the end of World War II, and then it became its own country. So it only won its independence in 1946, and the entire first half of the 20th century was made up basically of dominance by the United States and insurgency against U.S. troops. It was a Vietnam before there was a Vietnam. It was a bloody jungle war where the U.S. Army was fighting these Filipino insurgents, hand-to-hand combat in these jungle situations, and they were going around and massacring entire villages. And if you read the history of the Filipino War, it reads very much like the war in Vietnam.
Richard has a comeback. Richard Rush, he says, Ryan, Trump's false flags are distractions to change the conversation from his serious problems in D.C., so things that he could be impeached for are worse, and he doesn't want to. I mean, he couldn't be impeached for this.
Yeah,
right?
But he's going to get impeached by his distractions then. He's already getting people talking about impeachment based on the things that he's doing. So, maybe Richard's not saying that he's good at what he's doing, that maybe what he's trying to do. I think he's just has deep ADD and just flitters all over the place, and also believes like there are no consequences for anything that he does.
Okay, well, Richard also says that, the NFL refs are pretty good, but the Cleveland Browns just can't seem to get a win.
They are good. I mean, you look at those calls, and like that's split-second stuff, and they nail it 99% of the time.
Okay, so this happened while you were doing the transition, and he took a week off to reset and everything. I was live with Bill Press, and someone brought up Seth Rich. Do you know who it is? Mm-hmm. Okay. And Bill Press, he had heard about it, but at the time he couldn't even make the connection. And another person was saying that basically this is not real journalism to be talking about the things that Trump has been doing that involve obstruction of justice and giving secrets to Russians and stuff like that. That it's basically fake. And Bill Press just went off. He got so upset that his microphone fell off, and I had to come in and put it back on. It's pretty classic. It's only on Facebook Live here. It's only on TYT Politics. So I want to give you a chance to respond, because we have another Seth Rich comment here from Terry Sanders. Would you like to address the conspiracy theory that Sean Hannity and others have pushed that Seth Rich was murdered by Hillary Clinton?
I mean, I think on one level it shouldn't Anyway, let's pretend for a moment that okay, let me say this first of all. I used to live in the neighborhood that Seth Rich lived in, and I've heard people describe it as a safe neighborhood and say that there's no way that somebody would be killed in a robbery gone wrong in that neighborhood. Bullshit. I lived in that neighborhood. I got jumped in a few blocks from there. Like, it is a gentrifying neighborhood, absolutely. It is certainly a place where you could get killed in a robbery gone wrong. That's just you can throw any crime stats you want at me. I'm telling you, I lived in that neighborhood. Late at night, it can be a dangerous neighborhood. So that part of it you can just put aside. Separately, let's pretend for a second that he was a source for leaking some DNC emails, and that all of the law enforcement agencies and intelligence communities are lying about how they detected hacking into the system. That doesn't explain John Podesta, doesn't explain the hack of the RNC, doesn't explain the hack of the DCCC. It doesn't explain the hack of all of these other places that were also hacked, and that information was also disseminated in a similar way. So right there, it stops making sense. Separately, Edward Snowden, his location is known. He hacked into the NSA and leaked all that information. Chelsea Manning, hacked into the State Department and leaked all of that information. Julian Assange regularly publishes all this leaked information. The whereabouts of all of these people have been known to the U.S. government, and they have not been killed. Like, what? So what's the motive? What's the benefit if something has already been leaked to going out and killing someone? Also, the Hillary Clinton campaign was sure it was going to win. What are you going to do? Go around killing people when you know you're going to win? So I feel like people haven't really thought through. Like, if they grant what I think are let's say you grant what I think are absurd assumptions, but then you think it through logically from that point, it all completely falls apart, and it's kind of horrifying to think about it from his parents' perspective, that this guy had his life cut short, and in the wake of it has become this pawn in this bizarre conspiracy game. And also, if you're out there talking about Seth Rich, but earlier you were talking about, well, why didn't the DNC report that had been hacked, or why didn't they respond to the FBI? How do you explain that? So were there hacks that they ignored, or was it Seth Rich? Like, stop trying to have it all different ways.
What do you think about Sean Hannity? I mean, he says he's not going to do it anymore, but basically throwing up this kind of interference to protect his president.
Well, he's something else. I didn't watch his show last night. I saw him tweet that he read the essay from Seth Rich's parents and was deeply moved by it. Did he follow up by saying he was going to stop at this point?
Well, I'm not certain. I saw it on Twitter as well. I just want to say that a friend of mine named Joe Montano died suddenly. He was a smoker, and he died in his sleep right in the middle of the campaign last year. And he had been an aide to Tim Kaine. He was kind of the person who inspired me to leave L.A. and become more interested in political stuff. And it was a huge blow to me that he died. He's, not much older than me. And then when somebody on Twitter responded to my trying to just throw a message out there of love to him by saying, well, he was killed by Hillary Clinton. I mean, that just, and it was put in a way that sounded like maybe it was true. I don't know. Maybe there's something. I don't know. It connected all these little things. It wasn't as simply as, I don't like Hillary. It was, oh, well, he had secrets that the DNC didn't want to get out, and so they killed him and stuff like that. And it just, immediately blocked that person. But I continued to see it floating around, and, he wasn't my child, but just being his friend, having people say that, it was the worst thing that happened probably for my whole experience covering the campaign last year, being in the middle of all those ugly rallies and people turning around and cursing at us at Trump's command and glaring at us, witnessing people getting kicked out, but just, this online kind of hate on command frenzy. Something has to be done about that.
And it's heart-wrenching. And here's the thing, though, is that the game that's being played out there is being played out in the open. Like, there is the establishment has control in ways that are transparent and obvious. They have more money, they have more power, they have control over the police forces. Like, this is how they do things. There's Citizens United. There is before that, there's soft money. There is collusion between major corporations and the political parties, and then there are people outside of that orbit that are working against that. But the game that is being played in the open, and you can combat it in the open with people-powered movements. You don't need to invent these things that aren't happening in order to find evil in the world. There's plenty of it, and it's right out there in front of your face.
Okay, lastly, Mike Reddick says, highlights from these stories should be added to the break times and the nightly news stories, 6 to 8 Eastern, that the main TYT show. Do you want to do a final thing and say thanks to Mike for the suggestion?
Thanks to Mike for the suggestion. Cenk, if you're watching, we'll send you the clip, and you can throw it in there. Thanks everybody for taking some time out of your day and joining us here. We'll be back again soon.